Togate and Drecker Yenishe, Donde E Nishinigi E Inde Nishe, Irish Basha Chin, Inde Dasha Che, German Dasha Nelly, Kote Go E Tishli E Portland, Oregon Inasha, Shema E Kathy Lindsay Woye, Shaza E Dale Ecker Wole. My name is Andrew Ecker, my mother Kathy Lindsay, my father Dale Ecker. My mother's mother Elva Gallegos, Apache woman from New Mexico. My father's mother, Evelyn Beatty, an Irish woman from Pennsylvania. My mother's father, Leroy Lindsay, Apache man from Arkansas. My father's father, Wayne Ecker, German and Algonquin from Pennsylvania. I have a daughter, Bailey, a son, Peyton, a beautiful, beloved fiance, Monica. Grateful to be here with all of you today, sharing a little bit about something that is really close to my heart and meaningful, especially in this time that we're in right now. Something that I feel can really help us all in the navigation of the current crisis and also within whatever you're going through. You know, we grow up in a culture that's really great at creating jobs, yet is really challenged to create earthlings, really challenged to create human beings, really challenged to emphasize the necessity of the rest that comes when we optimize our space into understanding that we are children, grandchildren, and of the air, the water, the fire, the earth, simplicity, you realizing that we are emotional beings, and yet inside of that complexity of navigation, that there is a rest that can happen. This foundation is found in my book, The Sacred Seven. Please connect with us. Get a free copy of the book, The Sacred Seven. It will help give you a foundation that maybe is missing. It's based on evidence-based practices of indigenous communities from around the world, in incorporating the ceremonial introduction as a foundation for self-identity, and then emerging into other parts of sovereignty. So today, what am I talking about? Well, this is part 2 of a 2-part video on how to navigate emotional density. Now, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the way that I understand emotional energy, and that is, well, basically energy as a whole. So we have ideas in our mind and concepts that are reinforced over and over again with the idea of I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great, I'm feeling amazing, I'm feeling like I'm in my higher self. You know, this is all, like, for me, it creates duality, and it limits really the understanding of the acceptance of what we come to when we mature in our evolution into the space of emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, I like to call it. So, I'm going to give you a brief understanding of the way that I look at emotions, and this comes from years of facilitating sacred space, working in psychiatric lockdowns, memory cares, institutional settings where people are dealing with not only captivity, but a lot of behaviors. I have felt into collective consciousness, and also being a person that has a heightened state of empathy as a survival tool, I have been able to navigate energy in a way that many people maybe have a challenge to understand. And that is in 2 forms, density and flow. Now, this understanding of emotional density, it can create an idea of, oh, dense emotions are no good. Well, dense emotions can actually help you optimize and give yourself sovereignty in your life once you understand the principles of energy in the form of density and energy in the form of flow. When energy is in the flow state, it's constantly looking for a container or a metaphysical architecture in order to inhabit. Now, with that premise or foundation, we're going to get into how to navigate some emotional density that's tied into abuse, neglect, and trauma. And I went over 3 basic tools in the last video in this series. And those tools are self-empathy, time travel, and service. I'm going to get into art, prayer, and acceptance of the cycles today. And really, the next three parts of this understanding and the tools that I'm sharing today are really in the optimization of the balance of the feminine. We have a tendency in our contemporary culture of operating through the toxic masculine. And this toxic masculine energy has a continuum of linear conceptualization of emotions. This is when I'm getting over something, right? I'm in the process of getting over this. And what happens when we live in this sort of space of understanding our emotions is we begin to forget how the feminine and the nurturing side of us creates cycles, and those cycles of acceptance really bring us to a place of liberation. So, this is important because many of us criticize ourselves when we go through another cycle of our emotional density. I want to share with you that it's okay to be in that space, that it's actually a part of the process of your mind understanding the trauma, your mind understanding the process. And for those of you that like the language of forgiveness, I'm going to talk about the language of forgiveness. The process of forgiving a person, in my reality, is based around getting to the optimization of emotional empathy tied to self-empathy and also into the practice of empathizing with the abuser. Now, when we begin to empathize with the abuser, it is a deep step into a courageous act of really navigating the why. And the why is sometimes very difficult when especially we don't have the tools of what I would say is self-hermeneutics or social hermeneutics. You know, these studies within the humanities are very important when we learn to navigate our own emotional trauma. Myself, I've been a student of these practices for a while now, and I can tell you that it came to me as a natural kind of optimization of the way of understanding some of the abuse, some of the neglect in my life. Growing up in a home where both of my parents were drug addicts, my mother dying of a cocaine overdose, my father dying of cirrhosis of the liver caused by hepatitis C. Being a little boy, I was shoplifting with my mom to support her cocaine habit. And by the time I was a teenager, I was using heroin with my own father. This was the cycle of dysfunction in my life. I have gotten to a place now where I find freedom and sovereignty from the neglect and the abuse of being a child growing up in that environment. And I've actually found my medicine. And this is really what I am hoping to impart to you, is a vehicle of understanding how to liberate yourself, not only from the density of the captivity, but to optimize your perception of that continual existence in that reality. You see, when a person tells you that you need to get over something, in my life, right, that understanding brought me into a place of defense, because I would think to myself, you know what, how do you ever get over being the son of two drug addict parents? Like, you don't get over watching your mother get beat up by the police during a raid. You don't get over being used by your parents, being left at drug houses. You don't get over these things. What you can do is learn to understand the reason, and also to understand with perception and clarity how you can begin to utilize that in your life. Now, art is the next in our series of tools that you can begin to create an optimization of that energy. And myself, as an artist, as a musician, as a poet, as a person that has used art in my life as a tool to create conscious connection, and conscious connection to the understanding of how I am processing, has been a liberation. I want to emphasize to you that the use of art as a flowing state of deep contemplation can bring you to a place of elation. You can actually look at the art and look at where it was formed, and you can channel the density of that experience into the art, and it will bring you so much beauty in your life, so much beauty that I want to encourage you to utilize that form, that teaching. And one of the ways that I really find that we can begin to access the density of our trauma is to actually go into that space as deeply as possible, with courage, with the ability to navigate that space with understanding, love, compassion, and empathy. This is really going to bring us to a deeper understanding of how to access that energy. Once we access the energy, we can now create a container, a metaphysical architecture, an energetic architecture, to begin to create an opportunity for that to serve our process. Now, this is going to sound really outside of the realm of understanding for a lot of people, but I have gotten to the place now in my life where the trauma of my childhood, even as an adult, even, being a former heroin addict myself, getting caught up in crack cocaine addiction, going to prison, all of the things that happened to me in my younger years. This has been a catalyst for my ministry. It has been a catalyst for my work. It has been a catalyst for my understanding of how to help people and to be in service. Therefore, the process has actually helped me. And in that realization, I'm letting go of a lot of the density of the captivity to the experience, and I'm allowing myself to step into flow. This is what I'm hoping for you. Many of us out there in the community right now are dealing with, especially now with the pandemic, we have a lot of time to go inside to ask the questions that we've been avoiding. And as we begin to ask those questions, it's time for us to find the tools that can help navigate these systems. This is why so many people are dealing with suicide, drug overdose. There are so many people out there that haven't checked in with their mental health and are really going through the world just kind of in flow in a certain sense, but yet these viral programs are operating in their mind and in their consciousness, and they're creating disconnect in relationships. This is when suffering comes in, loneliness, isolation, all of these dense energies that really create captivity and lead to disease and lead to mental issues. All of these sorts of energies can be navigated with some simple tools. Art is one of those tools. I also want to share with you the power of prayer. Now, prayer for me maybe has grown in my life and has become a practice that is very important to me. Daily prayer is not just for me, looking at my food and putting my hands out and thinking a good thought, or holding a glass of water and thinking a good thought over that water. Prayer, and that is perfectly fine. I believe that all prayer is good prayer. Whenever you step into the space of understanding and recognizing the sacred, or recognizing the holy, or even stepping into relationship, this is going to help you optimize your spirituality, and it's going to help you also live a more abundant life. Me, in my practice, setting aside that time to really go into that place. I feel that prayer is actually a meeting place where I connect to the consciousness of the universe. I connect to source energy, Jesus Christ. I connect to Lao Tzu, Buddha. I mean, all of the holy ones are inside of that realm. And it is a lodge that is made of love. It is made of light. It is made of the ability for me to really optimize my own person. And in that space, through what I feel is a conditioned neuroplasticity. I feel like there's something that happens to me biologically when I actually go into the presence of the universe. And this has really allowed me the ability to understand how not just prayer, right? And prayer sometimes can get into this thing where we're looking at prayer as asking. Over and over and over again, we're asking for God to bring us something, or God to bless us with something. And what I have come to realize is that the prayer of gratitude is the acceptance of knowing it is already done. Now, this is an optimized prayer, because one of the tools that I found in my life in really navigating the karmic consequences of generational incarceration, generational addiction, and really looking at not only my own DNA, but also like the environment, like how I create a womb of prayer. And that womb of prayer creates abundance and actually impregnates the space with the ability to create prosperity. What are the keys and the tools to accessing this realm, this energetic field, this metaphysical architecture? Gratitude. Gratitude is the ability to really receive what is unseen. And as you begin to practice the prayer of gratitude, giving thanks for that which you are receiving into your life, you will begin to feel and sense a shift in your reality. And this shift in your reality is not only the lesson of the karmic consequence of the density of trauma, the suffering that you've had in your life, the isolation, the loneliness, the addiction. It's an understanding of how you can begin to find the necessary channel in your life to look at that process with the ability to find acceptance. And in finding acceptance, the challenge of the courageous is to give thanks for that process. So, one of the most powerful tools that I can share with you, and this is something that came to me when I first stepped into my spiritual practice way back in 1900, and I would say my deep awakening happened prior to me being incarcerated. Although being incarcerated and doing 3.5 years in prison was an elevation of that, but the practice of stepping into infinite intelligence, limitless potential, this began really, I would say, in 95, 94. And in those years of my life, I was experiencing what a lot of people would call a spiritual awakening. This is when the synchronicities in my life became overwhelming, and the lack of guidance and the lack of really the tools of navigating led me to a place in which I was captivated by that for many years. Of course, the use of psychedelic substances probably added to that. When the doorway was open and I was walking into the realm of the mystery, the mystic, the etherical, I was confronted with the reality that my consciousness was creating, yet I was in a place of lack of understanding that it was actually me. I felt that there was an outside entity or something other than myself creating the patterns and the sequences in my life. When I came to the place of sovereignty and I came to the place of liberation from the idea of the demonic or the, what I would say is like the idea of entities, even aliens, right? These were all different realms of consciousness that I was experiencing in my life, yet I didn't understand how to navigate that, and the power that I was receiving was overwhelming. I was instantly materializing things into my life through thought. And that vibration that I was actually experiencing is something that I know now in my life as a tool for really creating an abundant existence. Yet at the beginning of this process in 94, 95, those years, it was overwhelming. And many people experience this. And when I talk to people that are in the midst of it, there's almost an energy that I can recognize in them. And a lot of times they will gravitate to me, and I'll be able to give them some necessary tools and guidance that was not available to me. This was a very powerful and challenging time in my life that I am really blessed to actually survive. It was a time in which it was so overwhelming that I was suicidal, and dealing with the suicidal ideation enhanced through many forms of reality reflecting that into my consciousness was a space that was completely overwhelming. So I understood that as I became grateful for that experience and actually being grateful for what was going on inside of my mind, the karmic consequences of that reality began to shift. And I feel that this is where we step into the eternal yes in prayer. The eternal yes in prayer is an understanding of navigating the language that goes on within your cognitive creative aspect of life, and also understanding when you navigate language with your words, how profound and liberating it can be when you really understand how to create without the knots and the no's and the buts and all of these words that create resistance. There is a lot of words inside of our language that create energetic resistance. When we learn to navigate language in a way that is in flow and is in a constant state of flow, we're stepping into the language of God. We're stepping into the language of Goddess. We're stepping into the universal language. This is the consciousness that creates reality. And it's important that when I describe prayer, I'm not just describing the prayer of God, give me $1 million, God, save me from this situation or circumstance, but instead I'm giving you the absolute, in my mind, practice of the prayer of gratitude, which is the liberating tool to help you in your emotional density, whether it's through abuse, trauma, or neglect. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Andrew, how in the hell am I going to be thankful for my abuser? It's steps. It's a process. It is the linear. It is the masculine. The masculine will help you feel protected inside of that space. And I'm not talking about the toxic masculine. See, within the Sacred Seven, the tools that I have uncovered in my book, there is a practice of equality within the Trinity, which is the feminine, the masculine, and the inner child. When you really begin to optimize these three parts, your relational spirituality will come into focus with brilliance. And as it comes into focus with brilliance, you will have the necessary tools to understand how to create a dialogue within your own cognition that will bring you to a place of acceptance. And that acceptance creates an opportunity to see and to feel the practice of prayer of gratitude. This is a liberating tool, and it does take the ability to navigate these experiences with the masculine energy in a form of protection, in a form of courage, in a form of ability. So we have the feminine, the masculine, and the inner child, which are all sacred parts of the Trinity, which is the triangle that built the pyramids. I love to say that because it reminds us of the necessary understanding of how we can actually fortify our own space of consciousness. Very important. So the last of the three that I'm going to touch on in this this video series is the acceptance of the cycles. Now, as we were in the linear, the idea of the masculine, now we're stepping back into the process of the feminine. Okay, when we look at the trauma and we get to the place of gratitude, we get to the place of acceptance, we actually hone in. There are many of us out there that in our lives, we deny the trauma, we deny the neglect, we deny the abuse, because that sort of cognitive confrontation is too much for the body to handle. And that's okay. I can tell you in my life, it was many years I would get a little taste of the trauma, and yet I wasn't ready to actually go into it. I didn't have a community that was really available for the practice of holding space in collective consciousness for me to understand how to navigate these areas of my life that I knew were working in the viral programming, which is really upsetting. Because when you understand, right, that your trauma has manifested dysfunction in your relationship, the divorces, the breakups, the business failures, all of these things, it's like, oh my gosh, there's nobody to blame but me. But yet pointing that finger and really blaming someone else is the practice of the contemporary culture. This is kind of the air we breathe. I mean, how many times have you listened to somebody on television and they will say, you know, this made me feel, or it makes me feel. I mean, there are people that are in constant captivity of their own emotions, and it's an epidemic. And this is why we're at a place where our mental health is so challenged. So back to acceptance of the cycles. When the masculine is optimized, the masculine gives you the ability to go into the density with courage, to find the ability to manifest the greatness of gratitude. And in manifesting the greatness of gratitude, we can then understand how to liberate ourselves in that practice. Now, gratitude will come naturally when we begin to open up with vulnerability and intimacy. When we open up with vulnerability and intimacy and we allow for our medicine to manifest, we then in turn create an opportunity to understand the acceptance of the cycles, which comes in the feminine. This is where the sacred feminine energy will begin to really help you loosen yourself from the idea of I need to get over this or I am healed of this. You see, the thing about a lot of spiritual practices and technologies is that it's this idea of, okay, my higher self, or I'm healed, or all of this language that creates guilt and shame when a memory of the trauma manifests or a trigger happens. And instead we begin to put our lower self in the corner, and we begin to look at our this process as something that is horrible. It's like we begin to demonize our own understanding, our own history, our own past. And this is it's all over the place right now. I mean, I listen to YouTube videos, I listen to podcasts. I'm constantly trying to educate myself and to better myself. And if you haven't signed up for our podcast, please do. We have the Sacred Seven podcast as well. It's another way that you can get this information. And it just is all over. You know, there's so many people that are caught in the captivity, and also individuals that have psychiatric degrees and are psychologists and are coaches and all of these big labels out there, and yet their language, when a person that actually has done the work around language and has stepped into the eternal yes, or has asked the Creator and has received the ability to understand the language of God, when you begin to listen to those individuals that are still caught in the captivity, it's like, oh my goodness, I feel compassion, empathy, and love for these individuals. Yet the cycles of the feminine are what bring us into that process of acceptance. And this is really challenging for many because we don't want to be in process with our density. We don't want to be in process with our trauma. Yet when we have a functional community of people that will actually hold space for you, there is a space where you can find beauty inside of that which is in a continual process. I mean, I don't know if any of you have been on Facebook long enough to realize this, but there are times when you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh man, I have a stuffed up nose, I'm feeling like I have a cold, or let me use another example. You wake up in the morning and you say, gosh, I feel great. Today is such an awesome day. I'm reminded of learning to ride my bike as a kid. And then you go back into your Facebook memories and there's a picture of a bike on that day that was your first bike. In other words, what I'm saying to you is if you begin to understand the cycles of your reality, you can find acceptance for your trauma, and you can get out of the toxic masculine that tells you over and over again that you have to get over this. You see, when you really understand that your medicine is in the sexual abuse, your medicine is in the neglect, your medicine is in the emotional abuse, all of the trauma that you've been through in your life is a part of you. It is an experience that you've had, and it is valid. And guess what? I love you just the way you are, and I hope that you can say to yourself that you were doing your best. In whatever it is, your addiction, your suicide attempts, whatever process you've been through in your life, I want you to know that self-love says, I was doing my best. And this is really important for us as a culture that we're creating to really understand that that is a process of permission. And that permission liberates, and it gives us a powerful resting place in our life. So acceptance of the cycles, optimizing the sacred feminine, this is where we begin to liberate ourselves from the captivity of emotional density. I'm really grateful to be able to share this with you. And again, please go to our website, sign up for a free copy of my book. If you do get a signed copy of the book, they're $27. It allows me to send a book into the prisons. We are partnered with the Arizona State Corrections, and every signed copy of the book that we send out, I send another copy into an institution for people just like me that are dealing with generational trauma, dealing with generational drug addiction, generational incarceration. And what they're going through right now in the pandemic is really intense. So thank you so much for joining me today. I want to end in prayer. And this prayer space that I open up here is one for everyone. So regardless of where you're at in, your religious orientation, any of those things, I hope you feel comfortable sticking around. And I've been doing sunrise prayers, but these afternoon prayers are nice as well. So I hope you enjoy this time. I do work in spiritual gifts as we go into the prayer place. And if something comes to me, word of encouragement, word of prophecy, something like that, I will activate in that space. And if you have a prayer request of any kind, please post it in the comments and I'll try to facilitate that. We've been doing these group journeys into the Sacred Seven, which is a really awesome time. And I'm just waiting here to post when we're going to do the next group. We've also been working on a little side project, which is a trailer restoration. It's a 1978 Cavalier trailer, and it's been a lot of fun. Me and Monica have been working on it every day. Spent about 6 hours out there working today. I'm a little bit, it was hot. All right, I'm putting the cedar down here on this coal for us. Go ahead and pray us in, huh? All right, however you feel comfortable grounding in, feeling the earth underneath you, reminding yourself you're supported. If it's available for you, I invite you to close your eyes and just step into this prayer place. And Father, Mother, Creator, Source, we thank you for this opportunity to be in this prayer place that was founded before the creation of time. We thank you for the above place, the below place, the inside place, the east, the south, the west, the north, and all the holy ones that are there, the Gan, the Kachina, the Yebiche, the holy angel light beings of this land, the land of the Akmal Atom. And we give thanks for this land here and all of the lands that my relatives are joining me through this prayer. We thank you that you have allowed for us to enter into this place knowing that all of our needs are met. We thank you for the provision that you have given to us, for the optimization of our creativity, imagination, and innovation, that we may carry out what it means to be in the place of production for the means of restoration, that we may produce to restore people, families, community, and the planet. I thank you for those that are out there that are suffering right now, that are dealing with the trauma of the past, that are dealing with abuse and neglect, and also the suffering of the loss of relationship. I thank you, Creator, for those that are dealing with divorce and that are going through the isolation of loneliness. And I pray that you would allow for us to come to this place of gratitude, that we may give this to you, that we may lay it upon the earth, and that you may use the water, the air, and the fire to remove this from us in a way that brings us to a place of clarity, that we would not be in the hyper-focus, but instead extending our consciousness into the seven sacred directions. And we allow for our minds to be opened up, that we may find the medicine in that which we are allowing ourselves to process. And in this place of processing, we allow our body and our mind to metabolize that density, that we may utilize it in our consciousness to bring people closer to this abundant place of energy in which we have designed reality to be a peace that surpasses all understanding. We thank you that we are like the tree planted by the stream of water, that we have found the source of life, that you are the light to our footsteps, that you are the wings of the eagle that gives us the place in which we are hid in the shelter of your shield. We thank you that you have allowed for us to be in a place of navigating with the compass of the desire of love to find those relationships that serve our process. We thank you that we have a government that cares about all people, that cares about the refugee, that cares about the immigrant, that cares about the hungry and the hurting. We thank you for a military industrial complex that breathes peace that allows for the soldiers to put down their guns. We thank you for a military industrial complex that comes to the place of the end of the Afghani war. We thank you for the end of war upon the earth. We thank you for the place of realization as we come into this knowing that you are here with us, that you have allowed for us to navigate this process, understanding that limitless potential is inside of every single one of us, as we are a cord of many strands that is not easily broken. We thank you for binding ourselves to the Holy Spirit, for binding ourselves to the power of the creative force of the living God. We thank you that in this place we are one. We thank you that the dissolving of the barriers of our limited perception step us into the place of limitless perception. And as we begin to optimize our own view of this world, we feel the gratitude and the love, the compassion and the empathy of knowing that we are here in this time of great knowing, this time of great understanding, this time of great liberation, this time of reconciliation, as we are reconciled back to the place in which our spiritual consciousness is, dissolve the barriers of limitation. We thank you for all of the religions of the world. We thank you for the dogma of those religions. We thank you for those individuals that are caught into religion and the manifestation of relationship is now brewing in their hearts. We thank you for the permission for them to live outside of the barriers and the captivity of religion. We thank you that they are being in that place of processing even now, love. Even now, the place in which they dissolve the ideas that have kept them in that premise of being of the elite, being of the chosen, being of those that are separated, but instead allowing them now to enter into the place of recognizing that we are all of the earth. We are all together in the infinite space of your divine love. We thank you for our hearts combining now and entering into this prayer place, knowing that we are being fulfilled, knowing that we are the lender and not the borrower, knowing that we have the provision of the heavenly realms, that you have made sure that all of our bills are paid, that every single one of our needs are met. We thank you that you have given us a dream to dream that is bigger than ourselves. You have given us an ability to see into an artistic work, a book that is being written. We thank you that you are bringing us to a place of a song being sung, a rhythm being played, Creator, a dance being danced. Thank you for the newness of ceremony. Thank you that you are bringing us together in a way that allows for this burden to be light because we are carrying it together. Thank you for the advancement of our spiritual community, that we may be in a place in which we recognize that we are enough. Thank you that we are enough. Thank you that we are whole. Thank you that the feminine and the masculine and the child are working together even as we pray into this space. Thank you for the liberation of our minds. Thank you for the holy ones that are here. Thank you for the guidance of the sacred. Thank you for the star nations, the holy beings that are inside of this container of light. Thank you for the angels themselves. Thank you for all of those that are working in accordance with the will of love to help humanity come to this place of recognizing that we can do it, that we can make a difference in this world. Thank you for bringing us back into balance with the air, the water, the fire, the earth, and allowing for new life to be manifested. Thank you for the fungus people. Thank you for the people that are working in the trees, the people that are working in the animals. Thank you for the hearts of all the living beings. Thank you for the creative force of the mountain, the creative force of the valley, the creative force of the canyon. Thank you that we are in a place in which we are allowing for the leadership to come to a place of facilitation. We thank you for facilitating and calling us back to the hoop of life, calling us back to the circle of life, calling us back to that place in which our families are embodied in love. We thank you for communication with those in our home place. We thank you for communication with our children. We thank you that we are able to communicate our needs effectively to all those that we are in contact with. We thank you for the ability to navigate this pandemic and to be in a place in which we are whole. We thank you for divine health, for the alignment of our cells. We thank you for the hunger for healthy foods. We thank you for the ability to live in the optimal weight that we have chosen for ourselves. We thank you that you have allowed for us to be in this place of knowing that health is a priority. We thank you for foods that care for our body. We thank you for a mind to choose the holiness. We thank you for a heart and a spirit that calls forward the optimization of all those that we are in contact with. Aniso amari oka siniti eshinito ama Banito chiku amase to okanito orima asinita ashu yati kienito asinita mari ukanita arima enshiki nita onata rimani onya sana to kasinita mari dorishkenita Ane to sanita kama to ne sedite komati te ane. O se ne to ni na shiko ne bawa to ne ta agase ni to ama. Ore makasi ni to shikene ta ani tauro ma onkani. Se ni to amani to tishkini to anatawari makaani to antiskini awa. O se ni to ma shike ani to ni ne asani to pati tong kanit asanito anito ma ori ta tishkinita arima ori tishkinita wa anisi tishkonita ma ori ta tkinita anina no mo asanita ashina. I was there at the time when the earth broke open and flowed out flowing rivers of lava and magma. I was there at the time when the earth met the sea. I was the cloud that hovered above. I was the cloud that allowed for the flow of the embers and the ash. I was the force that they called destruction, yet I have given life. I have given a home. I have given a place in which the head will be rested and the body will be rejuvenated. I have been there to the very edge of existence. I have turned back to see children holding hands. I have been to the very beginning and back. I have been to the place in which light has burned red. The struggle of understanding destruction as a powerful tool for liberation and reconciliation is one that for many of us we look at and we feel distant from. Yet the Holy Spirit brings to me this understanding that as the lava flows out of the volcano, it creates land. And as your temper arises and as you begin to step into that place in which you are out of control, understand that you can have the perception of really opening up awareness. Opening up the awareness to understand I am in a place in which I am about to erupt. Taking a breath, taking back yourself, realizing that you are emotionally intelligent and you are the one that will help this relationship understand its beauty. You are the one that is finding the humility to rest. In the arguments and the dysfunction in your reality, there is one that must emerge. And as that one emerges into the place of resting, and resting in love, the ears will be open and the seeing of the individual that has brought the trigger forward will be open to a place of compassion. This is something that you've known in your life. You've known that you must be the one to exercise restraint. You must be the one to be in the place in which you hold space for love. And the guidance that comes forward is to encourage that practice, to encourage you to rest in love. The eruptions that are happening continually in your relationship that is closest to you. I'm talking about a person that's very near to you. I believe it's a husband or even a wife. And there's this cycle of anger manifesting itself over and over again. It's an eruption. The liberation comes from you allowing yourself to rest in the place of compassion. This individual that's in your life is lacking spiritual and emotional maturity, and as they erupt, they're continually stepping into a cycle of dysfunctional behavior. You have been in the agreement since the foundations of the creation of the earth to be the loving guidance for this individual, yet in the process, you have allowed yourself to be elevated in your language to where they're at. Stay in the place of compassion. The breakthrough is coming. Stay in the place in which you are obedient to love. There's been this place of you wanting to leave the relationship, of wanting to just break up and not do the work that it takes. But yet the Holy Spirit's coming forward and coming forward in a powerful way of giving you perception. And I hope you receive that to your heart. I hope that you receive it inside of you even now as I'm speaking to that, and allowing for what you have once done, and you've seen progress in the relationship when you held love for this individual. Yet you step back into a patterning that is not serving the relationship. But there is a karma, there is a certain connection that you have on a spiritual level for both of your evolutions in this lifetime. And I'm sharing this with you because I know that the place that you're at is a place filled with struggle, and for you to have the faith to carry on will take the power of the universe. It will take you seeking that power from within you. But you have a calmness that is innate inside of you. Also, there is something that's coming forward in the intelligence right now, and I'm going to put Cedar down here for you here, a blessing here, that the substance abuse and the substances that are being used in the house, if it's alcohol, if it's marijuana, whatever it is that's elevating the situation, for you to be conscious of that and to begin to look at ways that you can live without that sort of captivity, adding to the already dysfunctional state of your own limits. Because you have limited yourself in your own consciousness. This person that you have been called to love has not had the place of really connection. And I really feel like I could work with both of you together in that space. I feel it intuitively coming through. So, yeah, the guidance of the Holy Spirit, the Ancient One that came through for me, was showing me this eruption of anger and how there is a person here that really knows their ability. They know how they have been called to love this person and how they have been called to be with them. And as they step into that place of peace, the metaphysical architecture of that relationship shifts, and both of them actually live into their incarnation. Because there's a huge breakthrough that's going to happen in this relationship. And I'm feeling that right now. So I'm called to encourage you. I'm called to encourage you. So give thanks. My name's Andrew Ecker. My mother, Kathy Lindsay. My father, Del Ecker. My mother's mother, Elva Gallegos. My father's mother, Evelyn Beatty. My mother's father, Leroy Lindsay. My father's father, Wayne Ecker. I'm grateful to be here with all of you and feeling the presence here as I step into this space of really connecting to. So what emerges for me right now is this need to connect to the animals, to connect to the animal totems. And you've been understanding that there is a connection in the world of the animals for some time now, but yet your consciousness really has not brought the practice to you. And you've been searching for outside information. You've been looking on the internet of how to utilize the animal totems in your life in a more practical, pragmatic approach. And I want to share with you that by looking at what other people have defined the animal totems as in your reality, you've actually limited your own consciousness from being able to set a definition for these animal totems. And I want to give you permission to listen to the story before the hummingbird manifests, to listen to the story before the hawk, before the eagle manifests, to listen to the story before the deer manifests. You see, you have a consciousness that is expanding into the realm of the animals, and they are teaching you. They're teaching you their medicine, but they are connected to a conscious vibrational frequency that is a part of the story of your life. I want to give you permission to call yourself forward into that story, to understand that your consciousness is actually creating the animals as they come through as a witness to what you need to do in your life. You're thinking about your aunt, and the hummingbird flies in front of your face, and you immediately go to Google to understand what the definition of the hummingbird is, when really you should be calling your aunt. I hope that you're hearing me, because the Spirit is calling you to activate your gifts, to activate the power of synchronicity in your life. And you are in the optimization of the flow of like the water, like the wind, yet there hasn't been a guide to really help you understand this in your life. And I'm giving you just a touch of the taste of the medicine, because it is ultimately your practice. You are ultimately the one who will begin to refine this energy in your life and begin to utilize it in a way that really creates your spiritual path. You see, you have had this gift in you since you were a child. And I'm speaking directly to you now because you know that you've been on the fringe of this. You've been on the very moment where you want to step into the practice, but yet there hasn't been that sort of nudge. Well, the nudge has happened now. I am here telling you and sharing with you that yes, you are creating synchronicities in your mind, and going off to Google to find the meaning of the hummingbird or the elk or the deer or all the animal people that are showing themselves to you is really outside of what Creator is using these tools to teach you. It is about the expanse of your consciousness. Listen to your mind and the narrative that you are creating. If you are in the place of the absence of the narrative and you are in the awe of the beauty of the moment, realize that this is a functional place for you. As the hummingbird manifests itself inside of your place of clarity, that really optimizing yourself and coming into that frequency instinctually is going to be the next place in which you allow your consciousness to really understand the practice of the cycles. You see, these are the very important processes that we begin to manifest in our lives as we mature in our spiritual practice. Whoo! Man, I just felt that shift. That was a big one. It was almost like the whole room went like this. So I know you're receiving out there. Please let me know what you're receiving here by giving me a little, either hearts or a thumbs up or something if it's resonating with you, because I just felt that. That was a huge shift. Even some of you that have been practicing the Red Road in your life haven't really heard this before. And I know that you've done your ceremonies, you've done your lodges, you've done your peyote, you've done your medicine, you've done these different things, and yet the captivity of the dogmas of tribes that you are outside of, like you're a person that knows that you have this knowing of the indigenous practices in this incarnation. Maybe you brought them from previous incarnations and you've actually been welcomed in certain places, yet the dogma of those religions, because remember, tribal communities have created a certain way of life that is specific to a dogma of their understanding. Yet in this incarnation, the Creator is really fortifying the space of giving you the understanding and the permission to be forward in your practice. Okay, you are designing your practice with your own intimacy, your own vulnerability, your own innate knowing. And this is something that I feel I need to encourage you in, as the Holy Spirit is speaking to me right now, to give you guidance to listen to the crackle of the fire. The elementals are calling you as well. Not only the animals, but the elementals. And the elementals have been knocking on the door of your life for some time and have even shown you themselves. They've shown you the practice of actually appearing to you in physical form. And one of those physical forms was an actual human being that had an elemental deity that was connected to them. This is what the guidance is giving me right now. And as you step into that place of really optimizing them, okay, what I mean is, I'm not meaning worship them, but I'm meaning looking at the definition of the metaphysical architecture of the space that you hold for that individual, because you have created them in your reality as a reciprocity. You are to give to them as they give to you. And in that practice of recognizing that they are water, that they are fire, that they are earth, that they are air, that they are gravity, time, spirit, whatever it is that they come through for you as, design that, hold the definition in your heart, and more information will come. I also want to give you permission to sit with the fire and meditate with the fire, listening to your own conscious story. What is the story evolving? What is the story telling you? When the crackle of the fire happens and you are in a place of conscious connection to your next destination as a traveler, or your next destination in business, or your next destination in relationship, that meditation and that expression that the fire is giving you in the crackle, in the falling of the wood, in the rising of the flame, in the color of the flames, this is all a part of your practice of intuitively understanding the navigation system. I want to liberate you from the captivity of your own. It's almost like you have this lack of confidence. And I want to share with you, I'm going to put some cedar down for that one. I want to share with you that even the greatest healers in your life had to practice. Okay, they practiced the mantle that was handed down to them. But you have come into this incarnation with the spiritual mantle of the Holy Spirit, and also the guides which have incarnated themselves through the elements in your life, and yet you're staying in that place of lack of confidence. Look around you where we're at right now. We are in a pandemic. We are in a mental health crisis. Your medicine is needed, and I want to encourage you to come forward. Come forward in your practice. Come forward in your understanding of your ceremonial space. You have seen the manifestation of your giftings, and I want to give you permission now. Walk in that place. Walk in that place of understanding that you are the one we're all waiting for. Okay? It's you. You know, and I love you for that. Thank you for receiving that into your life. Thank you for receiving that in your confidence and understanding. It is the Spirit that's speaking right now, of course. So this is how we begin to really navigate these processes. And in understanding this and coming as the student, coming as the child, you are holding the mystical energy of faith. You see, the child comes into this world knowing that it will survive because it has faith. There was some traumas that came in, and I'm feeling into some abuse, some sexual abuse. It was from a family member, and that was when the divide happened. Yet now you are in a place where you can elevate the child again because the safety of the masculine and the nurturing of the feminine has manifested in your life. And this is what the liberation, this is what the guidance is giving to me. This is what is really coming forward for you. And I want you to step into that and receive that in your life. Receive it wholeheartedly. Open up your mind to really allowing for that process to come in. I want to give you a practice that you can take, and this is to hold a glass of water tomorrow morning with the dawn's early light. Let the light reflect into the water, and then speak to that water as if it's a relative. Speak to it as if it's your grandma, as if it's your grandpa. Speak to it in that way, and then use it to wash yourself. Okay, wash yourself with the water. Put it in your hair. Put it on your ears. Begin to cleanse yourself with it, and then drink it. This is going to give you another level of connection to the water. The water is sacred and holy, and as you relate to the water, you will begin to understand the nature of the water. You know, one of the things that I do is I offer my hair to the water at times. I'll pull out some of my hair. I'll put it in the water. I'll give it as a gift. This is how we begin to live in complete relational spirituality, and these practices are important for all of us to remember. I am remembering them as I share them with you. All right, well, I think it's about an hour now, and I'm going to go ahead and step off of here. I hope you got something from the first part of this message. You know, these tools to navigate emotional density are really important. Please share this out with people. There was a deep connection that I had through the Holy Spirit for someone. The eruption, this anger in the relationship. I don't know exactly who that was for, but I do know that it came forward very strong. So thank you all for being here. Please connect. Get a copy of the Sacred Seven. It's free. You know, if there's an inability for you to purchase a copy of the book, we send a copy into an institution for somebody that's dealing with incarceration to give them an encouraging message. I really thank you again here. Beauty above, beauty below, beauty beside, beauty in front, beauty behind, beauty within. I am, we are made beautiful again. Blessings.